August 1945, Pingfang District, Harbin, Manchuria. In the final days of the Second World War, as Soviet forces advanced from the north and American bombing campaigns reduced Japanese cities to ash, a group of men in white laboratory coats worked through the night destroying evidence. Files were burned. Equipment was dismantled. The complex's most sensitive structures were demolished with explosives. By the time the first Soviet soldiers reached the site, it appeared to be nothing more than the ruins of a military installation, unremarkable in a landscape already full of ruins. What had operated here for nearly a decade was not unremarkable. It was among the most systematic programs of human experimentation ever conducted in the history of modern warfare. Its official designation was the Kwantung Army Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. The unit had been established in 1935 under the command of Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii, a physician and military officer whose combination of scientific ambition and institutional ruthlessness made him precisely the kind of man the Imperial Japanese Army needed for what it had in mind. Japan in the 1930s was engaged in the conquest of China, a campaign of extraordinary violence that the Japanese military command viewed not as an aberration, but as a strategic necessity. Biological and chemical weapons, Ishii argued, offered a decisive military advantage that conventional arms could not match. He was given resources, personnel, and most critically, an unlimited supply of human subjects drawn from the occupied Chinese population. They were referred to internally as maruta, logs. The dehumanization was not incidental, it was policy. The complex at Pingfang covered 6 square kilometers. It contained laboratories, autopsy theaters, holding facilities, a crematorium, and an airfield for the dispersal of biological agents. At its peak, it employed over 3,000 personnel, physicians, microbiologists, veterinarians, technicians. The experiments conducted there covered every dimension of biological and chemical warfare research. Subjects were infected with plague, cholera, typhoid, and anthrax, then studied as the diseases progressed, without treatment, to document the precise timeline and physiological effects. Others were subjected to pressure experiments, frostbite studies, vivisection without anesthesia. The purpose in every case was military data, the optimization of weapons capable of killing the largest number of people in the most efficient way. The subjects were not patients, they were instruments. Between 3,000 and 12,000 people died at Unit 731 during its decade of operation. The range of that estimate is itself a consequence of the destruction of records in August 1945. The true number may never be known. What is documented in the testimonies of survivors and in the partial records that survived is the systematic nature of what occurred. The schedules, the protocols, the rotation of subjects, the careful documentation of results. This was not the chaos of wartime atrocity. This was organized, funded, staffed, and recorded. It had a budget. It had meetings. It had career progression for its researchers. When the war ended and American forces occupied Japan, the United States Army was confronted with a decision. The biological warfare data accumulated by Unit 731 was, by any measure, the most comprehensive such dataset in existence. General Douglas MacArthur, overseeing the occupation of Japan, authorized a secret arrangement. In exchange for complete access to Unit 731's research data, the American government would grant immunity from prosecution to Shiro Ishii and his senior researchers. They would not stand trial at Tokyo. They would not be named at Nuremberg. They would walk away. The justification, expressed in internal communications, was that the data was too valuable to lose, and that the Soviet Union must not be allowed to obtain it first. The men who had run Unit 731 understood the arrangement perfectly. Several of them went on to prominent careers in Japanese medicine, academia, and public health. Ishii himself died of throat cancer in 1959. At home, in his bed, having never faced a court for anything he had done. The immunity deal remained classified for decades. Japanese government documents confirming the unit's activities were withheld from public access until the 1990s. Survivors who attempted to bring civil suits in Japanese courts were repeatedly denied, the courts finding, in case after case, that the statute of limitations had expired, that the documentation was insufficient, that the state bore no liability. The Chinese and Korean victims of Unit 731 received no official acknowledgement, no compensation, and no apology from either Japan or the United States for the arrangement that allowed their torturers to retire in comfort. Some of those survivors are still alive. They have been waiting for longer than most people have been alive. The science that was conducted on their bodies, or on the bodies of people they loved, is preserved in archives. The accountability is not.